Picture this for a second. You wake up tomorrow morning, and nothing feels normal anymore. Your phone has no signal. The power has been out for hours. Gas stations are already packed, grocery store shelves are empty, and every rumor spreading through town sounds worse than the last. Nobody knows how long it will last, but one thing becomes painfully clear. Whatever equipment you already own is probably all you're going to have for a very long time. Now here's the question almost every gun owner gets wrong. In a real emergency, would you reach for the rifle with the most accessories, the longest feature list, or the one everyone online keeps calling the ultimate fighting rifle? Or would you choose the rifle that simply refuses to quit after days of dust, rain, neglect, and thousands of rounds without perfect maintenance? Modern gun culture spends a lot of time chasing speed, customization, and the latest upgrades. But war has a way of changing priorities overnight. Suddenly, reliability matters more than appearance. Simplicity becomes more valuable than endless aftermarket options. A rifle that keeps running with limited supplies may become worth far more than one capable of tighter groups under ideal range conditions. When discussing military rifles, it's easy to focus on specifications. Muzzle velocity, magazine capacity, accessory compatibility, and accuracy are all measurable characteristics, but they don't necessarily answer the most important question. History shows that the conditions under which a firearm is evaluated can dramatically change which qualities matter most. A rifle tested on a clean shooting range, with unlimited maintenance and readily available replacement parts, is being judged under circumstances very different from those faced by soldiers or civilians during prolonged conflicts or disruptions. Military historians often point out that successful service rifles were rarely defined by a single outstanding feature. Instead, they tended to balance reliability, maintainability, manufacturing practicality, and logistical support. Those factors influence procurement decisions just as much as raw performance. Throughout this video, we'll examine several well-known rifle platforms from that broader perspective. Rather than asking which one is the best, we'll look at the engineering trade-offs behind each design, why those choices were made, and how different priorities shape their reputation over time. Every rifle is ultimately a collection of engineering compromises. Designers rarely begin with the goal of creating a firearm that excels in every category. Instead, they establish priorities based on the expected mission, manufacturing capabilities, and logistical realities of the time. Throughout the 20th century, military small arms evolved alongside changing battlefield requirements. Some programs emphasized lightweight construction to improve mobility, while others focused on mechanical simplicity to reduce maintenance demands. Advances in metallurgy, machining techniques, and production methods also influenced which operating systems became practical on a large scale. These choices often had consequences beyond the weapon itself. A design that was easier to manufacture could be produced in greater numbers during periods of high demand. A mechanism with fewer specialized components could simplify long-term maintenance. Standardized parts and consistent production tolerances could reduce the burden on military supply systems over many years of service. For historians and engineers, these design decisions are often more revealing than individual performance statistics. They illustrate how technological development, industrial capacity, and operational requirements shaped the evolution of modern service rifles, with each generation reflecting the priorities of its era rather than the pursuit of a universally perfect design. When historians compare service rifles, ballistic performance is only one part of a much larger picture. While muzzle velocity, projectile energy, and effective range are measurable characteristics, military planners have traditionally evaluated these figures alongside training requirements, ammunition production, and the realities of battlefield conditions. Different nations adopted different cartridge philosophies based on their expected operational needs. Some emphasized longer engagement distances and greater retained energy, while others favored lighter ammunition that allowed individual soldiers to carry more rounds during extended operations. These decisions reflected strategic priorities as much as engineering capability. Field reports from numerous conflicts also illustrate that environmental factors, terrain, visibility, and communication often have a greater influence on outcomes than small differences in ballistic specifications. As a result, military procurement programs have rarely selected a service rifle based solely on its external ballistics. Instead, they have weighed accuracy, controllability, durability, manufacturing efficiency, and logistical sustainability as interconnected factors. From a historical perspective, this broader evaluation explains why multiple rifle platforms with very different technical characteristics have each achieved long service lives. Their success depended not only on how a cartridge performed in testing, but also on how the complete weapon system fit the operational doctrine, industrial capacity, and long-term support structure of the armed forces that adopted it. Throughout the 20th century, nations often selected service rifles with long-term sustainment in mind rather than pursuing the most technically advanced design available. A platform that could be manufactured efficiently, repaired using standardized components, and supported through an established logistics network frequently offered greater strategic value than a more sophisticated alternative that demanded specialized tooling or complex maintenance. This principle extends beyond the rifle itself. Standardized magazines, interchangeable parts, and consistent manufacturing practices simplify training and reduce the burden placed on military organizations responsible for supporting thousands of personnel over many years. For researchers studying military history, these logistical considerations help explain why certain rifle platforms remained in service for decades. Their longevity was not necessarily the result of being the most advanced firearms of their generation, but rather of fitting into broader systems of industrial production, maintenance, and organizational planning that could be sustained over time. Different nations adopted different cartridge philosophies based on their expected operational needs. Some emphasized longer engagement distances and greater retained energy, while others favored lighter ammunition that allowed individual soldiers to carry more rounds during extended operations. These decisions reflected strategic priorities as much as engineering capability. Field reports from numerous conflicts also illustrate that environmental factors, terrain, visibility, and communication often have a greater influence on outcomes than small differences in ballistic specifications. As a result, military procurement programs have rarely selected a service rifle based solely on its external ballistics. Instead, they have weighed accuracy, controllability, durability, manufacturing efficiency, and logistical sustainability as interconnected factors. From a historical perspective, this broader evaluation explains why multiple rifle platforms with very different technical characteristics have each achieved long service lives. Their success depended not only on how a cartridge performed in testing, but also on how the complete weapon system fit the operational doctrine, industrial capacity, and long-term support structure of the armed forces that adopted it. No military rifle has ever been without compromise. Every successful service weapon represents a series of engineering decisions shaped by the technology, manufacturing capabilities, and operational requirements of its time. Improving one characteristic often meant accepting limitations in another. Designers have long balanced competing priorities such as weight, durability, production cost, and ease of maintenance. A stronger operating mechanism may increase reliability under harsh conditions, but it can also add complexity or weight. Likewise, reducing overall mass may improve mobility while introducing new engineering challenges related to heat management or long-term component wear. These trade-offs become especially visible when comparing rifles developed in different decades. Earlier designs often emphasized robustness and manufacturing simplicity because industrial resources and production methods differed significantly from those available today. Modern platforms, by contrast, frequently incorporate advanced materials and modular construction that reflect changes in manufacturing technology rather than a universally superior design philosophy. For historians and engineers alike, these limitations are valuable because they reveal the practical realities behind military procurement. No rifle exists in isolation. Each is part of a broader system that includes doctrine, logistics, industrial capacity, training, and maintenance. Understanding those relationships provides a far more complete picture than judging a platform solely by its published specifications. By this point, one pattern should be clear. The history of military rifles has never been a story about finding a single perfect design. Instead, it has been a continuous process of balancing competing priorities as technology, industry, and military doctrine evolved together. Every generation of engineers worked within the limitations of its time. Manufacturing methods changed, materials improved, combat experience revealed new strengths and exposed unexpected weaknesses. As a result, the rifles that entered military service often reflected practical realities as much as technical ambition. Looking back across decades of development, the most influential platforms were not necessarily those with the highest performance figures on paper. Many remain significant because they could be produced efficiently, supported through established logistics, and integrated into the training systems and operational requirements of the organizations that adopted them. This perspective also explains why historians continue to debate these designs today. A platform that represented an ideal solution for one country, one era, or one operational doctrine might not have been the right answer under different industrial, geographic, or strategic conditions. Context has always mattered. Ultimately, studying these rifles is less about identifying a universal winner and more about understanding how engineering decisions intersected with economics, manufacturing, and military history. Together, they illustrate how technological innovation is shaped not only by what can be built, but also by what can be produced, maintained, and sustained over time. The opening months of the First World War offer one of the earliest modern examples. European armies entered the conflict expecting a short campaign, yet industrial demand quickly exceeded pre-war assumptions. Ammunition factories expanded around the clock, railways became strategic assets, and governments were forced to reorganize entire sectors of their economies to sustain military operations. Similar patterns emerged again during the Second World War, although on an even greater scale. Modern conflicts continue to demonstrate the same principle. Manufacturing capacity, access to raw materials, semiconductor production, transportation infrastructure, and energy supplies often become strategic objectives in their own right. The battlefield extends far beyond the front line into factories, ports, rail networks, and maintenance facilities. A technologically advanced piece of equipment has limited value if the industrial system behind it cannot replace worn components or maintain production over time. This broader perspective explains why historians often describe logistics as the invisible foundation of military power. The equipment visible on the battlefield represents only the final link in a much larger chain of industrial planning, engineering expertise, workforce organization, and national economic capacity. When that chain weakens, every military system eventually feels the consequences, regardless of how advanced its technology may appear. Throughout the 20th century, several nations invested enormous resources in developing technically sophisticated weapons that promised decisive battlefield advantages. Some represented remarkable engineering achievements, incorporating cutting-edge manufacturing methods and innovative mechanical concepts. Yet many of these programs encountered the same challenge. Their complexity demanded highly specialized production facilities, extensive maintenance infrastructure, and supply chains that proved difficult to sustain during prolonged conflict. By contrast, other military procurement programs emphasize standardization and industrial efficiency. Designers worked closely with manufacturers to simplify production, reduce machining time, increase parts, interchangeability, and minimize logistical complexity. While these systems were not always the most technologically ambitious, they often proved easier to manufacture in large numbers, maintain across dispersed units, and support throughout extended campaigns. This balance between innovation and practicality remains one of the central themes of defense planning today. Modern armed forces continue to evaluate not only performance, but also life cycle costs, industrial resilience, workforce requirements, and the ability of domestic industries to expand production during periods of heightened demand. Decisions made years before a crisis can ultimately determine how effectively a nation responds when strategic conditions change. This broader perspective sets the stage for the final chapter, where we step away from individual technologies and examine what the first 48 hours of a major crisis reveal about the relationship between military preparedness, national resilience, and the enduring role of industrial capacity. Communication networks become one of the earliest indicators of resilience. Decision makers depend on accurate information, yet history shows that the opening phase of nearly every large conflict is marked by incomplete reports, conflicting intelligence, and rapidly changing conditions. The speed at which governments restore situational awareness often shapes the effectiveness of every decision that follows. Industrial capacity soon becomes equally important. Factories may shift from civilian production to defense manufacturing. Supply contracts are reorganized and transportation networks are redirected towards strategic priorities. These transitions cannot happen overnight. They depend on years of investment in infrastructure, skilled labor, engineering expertise, and manufacturing flexibility. Nations that prepared these systems in advance historically adapted far more effectively than those attempting to build them during the crisis itself. The civilian economy also becomes part of the equation. Energy production, food distribution, medical services, telecommunications, and financial institutions all contribute to national resilience. Modern defense planning increasingly recognizes that military capability cannot be separated from the strength of the broader industrial and economic systems supporting it. Looking across the major conflicts of the last century, one lesson appears again and again. Durable success has rarely been achieved through technology alone. It has emerged from the combination of engineering innovation, industrial organization, logistical planning, economic resilience, and effective leadership operating together under extraordinary pressure.